D'Angela.
Thank you. All right, it's 6:30. Good evening. I'm going to call the Village of Corrales Governing Body regular meeting for January 25th, 2021 to order. Please, everyone stand while we do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of
flag
the United
of the United
States
States
of
of
America
America
and to the
and to the
republic
republic
for which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible.
indivisible,
with
with
liberty.
liberty
for all.
and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Now I'm going to take the roll. Counselor Lucero,
Here.
Counselor Knight,
Here.
Counselor Parker,
Here.
Counselor Burkett. I think he's coming. There he is, Counselor Burkett.
Present.
Counselor Murray.
Here.
Counselor Waldman. Counselor Waldman. Are you frozen, Counselor Waldman?
The
I think you
snowstorm
might
hit
be.
him early.
Yes, here.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, next we're
Can I
going to
hear
move
me?
on to item C, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda this evening?
Mayor, I move we approve the agenda.
Thank you, Counselor Murray. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is that Counselor Burkett? No. Counselor Parker?
Lucero.
Counselor? Well, I knew it wasn't Counselor Knight, I mean, okay, good job. Thank you very much for that second. All right. Let's do it this way. Anyone not in favor of approving the agenda tonight, please say nay. All right, hearing none, the agenda has been unanimously approved. We're going to move on to reports. Item D. Ron, what have you got for us this evening?
Mayor, we've got a few items we want to report on. I want to lead off with Tanya giving a COVID update, please.
Thank you. Commander Latin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Administrator Curry. As we all know, our numbers are high. We now have 272 cases in the Village of Corrales, and that's cases detected through the state. That's not home cases or people who just did not go get testing. I know a lot of people who've been sick that can't get into a test site, so the time they can get in, they're feeling better. We started this month out at 664 cases. I'm expecting our average is 11 or 10.8 a day, and we've been holding steady. So I expect us to be well over 300 for January. We have had some deaths in the village. We have had some really sick people. We've had also people with very minor symptoms. The state's positivity rate is 30%. And the state does not expect us to peak until first week in February. With that said, since we're not getting all the case data, we may have more. Maybe we're already heading to that peak, but I know in the meeting today we weren't. We did get some tests in from the national stockpile. Sorry, what the state purchased. Very few. I can use them for public safety, and I can use them for our low income people who can't find tests or need treatment, high risk. I've only got 45. I will get more. Once those come in, we're going to work on how many we get and if we need to set up a drive-through or how to get them out. Omicron, which you've heard in the news, stealth, is BA2. It is in the United States. It is a little bit different to sequence. It will have to be sequenced because it does not have the dropout S gene. State said they are still doing the same amount of sequencing and sending to CDC some, but I do know that the state lab will sequence. Get your boosters. We're still running shots. We have clinics this weekend, both Saturday and Sunday. Not tomorrow because I knew the weather was going to get bad. Just really super, super busy, but I'll be happy to stand for any questions. Oh, one other thing. If you have a runny nose, if you've got a headache, if you've got diarrhea, assume you have COVID until you find out otherwise. I'm getting a lot of people that call me and they thought they had a runny nose and a headache, and they're going about their life as normal. And then 5 or 6 days later, having to let people know that they exposed them, and then they're already sick. If you're vaccinated, especially boosted, people are starting with an itchy throat, runny nose, headache. And hopefully that's all you get. But I've had some boosted people in the older age bracket that have gotten pretty sick enough to go to the emergency room. So really watch for that. And I know it's hard, especially when we have windy days, but please really be careful. And my phone's always on for questions.
Tanya, I just had one question sort of going off of that. If we know somebody or we've got those kind of symptoms, but we never get a positive test, what should we do? Home test.
If you don't get a positive test at all, but you've tested, I've got a couple people that I know have COVID that have gotten rapid antigen and a PCR that was negative. We're waiting on a second. There's no doubt in my mind they were sick enough to go to the emergency room that they have COVID because their flu A and B came back negative. Stay home if you're sick right now. It is so important. I know that we're a society that believes in going to work and getting the job done, but staying home, or if you work by yourself, just be really careful. And if you don't have that positive test, don't think that you're also immune, because we don't know with Omicron, with BA.2, if the Omicron is going to give you any protection. We don't know that yet. Denmark, it's taking over Denmark. It's now 41% of the cases are BA.2. So far, no increased deaths or hospitalization. It's still maintaining that Omicron level. But with the sheer numbers of people we've got, our hospitals are bulging.
Thank you. Any other questions from counselors for Commander Ladin? Well, yes, thank you. I so appreciate your information, and I'll be so excited when you no longer have to talk about this subject all the time, right?
Me too, Mayor, me too.
All right, Ron, what's up next?
Thank you, Tanya. I just wanted to report to the governing body a few things here. We've had a good meeting today with the Interior Drain Committee, and that's a proposal that was been drafted up, and you've heard about it by Doug Finley. We continue to move forward on it, and one of the things that's key for it going forward is we're in the process of developing an MOU Conservancy District so that we can have their cooperation and obviously their agreement to access some of the areas over there that they are responsible for, and we have to have permission to move forward. But we had a meeting today that allowed people from Parks and Rec, Bicycle Committee, the Bosque Commission, and one other committee. We had a good, robust discussion for about an hour, talking about giving some input to Doug, talking about the finances of it. So I just want to let everybody know that that's going forward. And I think in the long run, we're going to end up with I would say a facility or a place where you're going to have more ability for the community to interact and enjoy parts of the Bosque that we haven't been able to do before, by making the Interior Drain kind of an interactive place for people to be in the village. Also, we had a meeting, and you may hear some more about this later on in the meeting from some of the folks that may speak during the forum. We had a good meeting with Terry Boyle with the Rio Metro Transportation Board. And the whole idea of that is that, as some of you may be aware, in the past, we had access to some of the transportation that comes out of the city of Albuquerque, but it was limited. And so because of the demographics of our community, et cetera, the mayor has kind of initiated a new discussion regarding this. And Councilor Knight is going to be participating in this, as well as myself as a backup for Councilor Knight. But the whole idea is to see if there's any possibility of getting access from Corrales into the transportation capabilities that the city of Albuquerque is offering to us. So you may be hearing some more about that as we go forward. Another thing where there's been a lot of discussion as of late regarding senior housing and how that fits into Chapter 18, how that fits into comprehensive plans, if you will, the whole works. And the discussion, it's one of those discussions, the more questions you ask, the more answers you need. And the more questions you ask, the more questions are generated by those questions that you ask. So we thought it would be best to send this off for hopefully a very robust and thorough discussion in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission and let them take a shot at that. So that's a happening thing. The last thing I wanted to mention is I wanted to thank Councilor Lucero, and he certainly can speak more about this, hopefully so, during the Councilors Forum, but I want to thank Councilor Lucero for putting together a meeting this afternoon. And it was a very productive meeting, I thought, with Mayor Chavez, who's heading up the governor's task force on getting all this money out the door and into communities. But because Councilor Lucero had some ability to make contact with Mayor Chavez, he had him on a phone call today for about 5 minutes or so, and he had a chance to hear from many of our department heads about their needs that they see are important for the village. And so thank you, Counselor, for putting that together, and I look forward to anything else you might want to say about it. That's it, Mayor.
Thank you. So we're going to move into the Counselors Forum. This section is for information purposes only, not for discussion and debate, to inform the governing body of an issue concern that would not be addressed on the agenda during the business session. And I am going to ask Councilor Lucero to give a little brief overview of what the meeting was like this afternoon.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that, Council. We were able to, we had a good, productive, informative meeting with Mayor Chavez. He's the liaison for the infrastructure from the governor's office. Our department heads were there. They were able to speak. Thank you to them because you know, they very eloquently portrayed what our needs are and our needs here in the village. Thank you to Chief Martinez, Chief Vic, Lynn, Michael Chavez. They all presented very well to him. It was very the Mayor Chavez was very receptive to a lot of the projects that we have going on here, and I think that's just kind of tells you where we're at in Corrales. We're in a very good spot when it comes to being able to utilize these particular funds that might be available. And I think this meeting kind of shed a little bit of light on how to better position Corrales to utilize those funds and benefit from those funds. And I think we have a lot of projects all displayed by our department heads that outline that. And I'm very pleased the way that meeting went. Now I'm hoping that moving forward, we could continue to keep that line of communication open with not only Mayor Chavez, but that whole infrastructure task force, and be able to do good things here in Corrales. I think this is the time to do it. I know we've always had a lot of needs for a lot of things, and I think we're in a very special position here in Corrales to benefit. So I appreciate all the department heads, the mayor, Mayor Marty Chavez, for coming and giving us some of his time today. He spent a little bit over 45 minutes to an hour with us. So he was very gracious with his time. So thank you to him very much. Also, to the meeting, we had a meeting with the Rio Grande Metro Trans Board, and thank you to Director Terry Doyle. You know, was very receptive to a lot of our issues that we may have here in Corrales, not only today, but we've had for the last however many long time. And he was very receptive to address our issues and very excited to help us. So good on him. So thank you for the time, Mayor. I think that's all I had. I might think of something else, but thank you for that. You're muted, Mayor.
I didn't want to be the feedback queen, so I did mute myself. Councilor Murray and then Councilor Waldman.
Thank you, Mayor, Councilors. I've only got a couple of things. So is it possible maybe next week to schedule a work study to discuss the LGIP money and along with the ICIP issues and what's going through the legislature. Maybe we can kind of take a look at that, and what we don't get out of the legislature, we ought to be taking a look at with the LGIP money that we are going to authorize. Also, I'd like to ask the attorney, does the village liability insurance cover malware or hijacking of our website by the New Mexico Municipal League policy? I'm just curious about, what's happened with Bernalillo County and their costs. It's going through the roof for them. So I'm just curious, if something happened similar to us, are we covered? Thank you.
It's a great question, and Ron or someone on staff may know the answer. I have not seen, and I was actually going to ask to take a look at it because we have a lot of changes going on right now, and you're pointing one of them out. Malware is extremely expensive. New Mexico counties does offer a policy. The extraordinary thing about it is the high cost of the deductible, though. It's a $250,000 deductible. So basically it's catastrophic coverage, but it does get people in to help you analyze what the problem is and then attempt to reconstruct everything. So I will follow up on that, Counselor, because we have that. And then with changes in New Mexico law in regards to the bill that was passed last session with the New Mexico Civil Rights Act, we have to, I think it'd be a good idea to do a little bit of audit to determine that how New Mexico counties has dealt with that. And so I will ask Ron to get our most recent version of our policy, and then we will probably have to have some discussions with the municipal league.
You're muted again, Mayor.
Melanie, I think you wanted to add to what Ron was saying.
Yeah, if I may, I just wanted to let the council and the village know that our IT team, Systems MD, does have a plan in place for if we should be the victim of a cyber attack. I don't have all of the details, but I can get that information. But the way that they have set up our new server system, we are much less likely to suffer ill effects from an attack like that. So there are contingencies in place to deal with that should that happen.
Thank you for that information.
Yes.
Counselor Waldman?
Yes, first of all,
Counselor Knight. I see you, Counselor Knight.
first of all, just kudos to Melanie for all her work on the looping and sound system that may be coming to the village. It's with an aging population, in many ways, it's going to be a tremendous boost, I think, for once we finally get back to meetings for those who need that. And I want to thank you for that comprehensive inclusion in the packet tonight. Secondly, I had an opportunity to talk with Raina a couple weeks ago, looking at the possibility of talking with the Anderson School of Management, perhaps a student in public finance, to see if we can maybe get her an intern, maybe train over the summer and have something ready for the fall. I think she could use some help in that office. She kind of gets overwhelmed at times, and I think it might be beneficial for both sides. So that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Waldman. Counselor Knight?
Thank you, Mayor. I was looking at our previous agenda that looked at the annex for the library, and I was wondering if the pollinator garden would be affected by the build out of the, it wouldn't. I see your head shaking no. Someone called me about that.
No.
And because they had gotten some money from Intel and it's already in. So that wouldn't, the new annex wouldn't affect that pollinator garden. Great.
No.
Super. And then I have one other question about the audio system for the council chambers. I was wondering if this gentleman, Mr. Langner, is that his name?
Yes.
It seems like he was volunteering to come in and look at our system and suggested some equipment. Have we had anybody else determine if this is the best way to go, or look at other systems that might be available?
So I did chat briefly with an audio engineer when I was looking at ordering the equipment, and their their ideas of what we needed ran into like thousands and thousands of dollars. And so that they wanted to try and sell us a system that was about $10,000 to $12,000. We're able to recycle some of what we have.
Right.
All of the microphones that are over in the council chambers that are the stand microphones, all of those still work. It's just somewhere along the way, someone cut the end of the cables, I guess, to try and attach it to some piece of equipment. And so all we need to do is just switch out the cable, and all of those microphones still function properly. And that right there saves us about $4,000.
Right, I
I'm
read that
gonna
in
say
your,
at this point, I'm sorry to put a point of order in here, but remember, this area is not actually for discussion and debate. So I'm feeling a little uncomfortable that we're starting to do a lot of discussion on items that are not actually on the agenda for that purpose. But I think we can see that there's a lot of enthusiasm about that. Perhaps you could forward more questions to Melanie, and at the next meeting we can do a presentation on what's happening with that. I think that would be more appropriate under our agenda and our rules. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
sounds good.
Anybody else on the counselor's forum on a different item? All right, seeing none, we're going to go to the Coriolanus forum. This section is for information purposes only, not for discussion and debate, to inform the governing body of an issue or concern that would not be addressed on the agenda during the business session. Who have we got tonight?
Hey, tonight we have Mr. Todd Kimball.
Thank you, Melanie.
You have 3 minutes.
Good evening.
Thank you, Melanie. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I testified 2 weeks ago about some of the transportation difficulties I was having in Corrales, and I just wanted to say thank you to various people, Councilor Lucero, Councilor Knight, Melanie, and Administrator Curry have all been outstanding in getting back to me and addressing the concerns. I know that local government doesn't often get complimented or doesn't get complimented enough, and I just wanted to say thank you. I'm very optimistic that we can get better public transit systems in Corrales, and I really appreciate it. I've lived a number of places, and this is one of the most responsive areas I've ever lived, and I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to now, I think that's it. Believe it or not, I think that is the one and only person on our forum. So now we're going to move on to the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the village council, will be enacted by one motion. There will not be separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. Discussion? All right, I'm going to take a vote. Councilor Lucero,
Aye.
Councilor Knight,
Aye.
Councilor Parker,
Aye.
Councilor Burkett,
Aye.
Councilor Murray,
Aye.
Councilor Waldman.
Aye.
Thank you so much. All right, we're going to move on now to new business. The first item is consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2204. This is a resolution adopting the update of the Village of Corrales' pay schedule and adoption of increases for cost of living increase or market adjustment. And I think Administrator Curry would like to start this item off.
Thank you, Mayor. As everyone on the council knows, we've been talking about this for a while. Just giving you a little more history than what you have there in your packet. The pay scales and the steps have not been upgraded for the village since 2016. And I think everyone here on this call is aware of the fact that many things have changed, including inflation, et cetera, since that time. So when I had the opportunity to come into this position, one of the things that I spent some time looking at and speaking with the mayor was trying to make Corrales and the people who work here in Corrales in a better place. And I know that that's the feeling and the will of the members of the governing body. It always has been. And one of the things that I look at when we started to embark on this process is that what we're trying to do here is actually make an investment. We're making an investment in our village through the folks that work here and hopefully want to work here and want to continue working here. And, you know, we make investments in brick and mortar, we make investments in things like conservation easements, et cetera. We make investments in property. We need to make investment in our people. And that's, to me, what this is all about. I think that's what the mayor would say as well. The other thing that makes this so unique to Corrales as we sit between the city of Albuquerque and the city of Rio Rancho is that everybody in this village that is considered to be a full-time employee or even a part-time employee, one of the things you have to do is be able to multitask. And I often joke that men or males can't multitask. I hope no one takes offense to that, but that's kind of the inside joke that I've always dealt with on sometimes personnel issues. But when you get down to the fact that in this village, we are so small and we are so helpful to one another to get our jobs done. I can think of, as we've gone through this discussion with the person, Judy Bentley, who's helped us with this, as we continue to develop the job descriptions to make them more clear to people going forward, is that we found through conversations with Ms. Bentley that we were in a situation where we would have one person in a village doing the jobs of 2 or 3 people, or having the scope of their jobs doing 2 or 3 people in Rio Rancho or in Albuquerque. We don't have the benefit of having a lot of backup, so we have to help each other across department lines, across policy lines throughout the whole time in the village. So that's the second thing that's important, is the ability to have our employees continue to multitask and help one another in the village that we live in. The other thing that was concerning to me, and I think concerning to the governing body, is that, you know, we want to make this a competitive place to work. We have to acknowledge 2 things. One, we want it to be competitive for people who are wanting to come and work for the village. And 2, we want to acknowledge the people that have been here for such a good period of time working for the village because they like being here. And yes, the village of Corrales is smaller than Rio Rancho or Albuquerque, or in that fact, Bernalillo. But that focuses even more is that we have an unusual demographic here, and we have a group of dedicated people that have worked here sometimes for decades. And we have to acknowledge that. So that's another thing that we help to accomplish in here. Again, the second thing is, being competitive. We, again, sit between Albuquerque and Rio Rancho, and oftentimes you can talk to our first responders, whether it be either the chief of police or the fire chief, is that there's a lot of movement within our community and in their communities when first responders are trying to work and find the best place for them to be with their families. So I worked on this for almost a year looking at it, and then I thought it was best to call upon someone who I thought was experienced and had a lot of expertise, which I did by gathering in Ms. Bentley. And one of the things that has happened during the course of this process is that there's been a lot of communication between Judy Bentley and Melanie and all of our department heads trying to develop the accurate job descriptions so people know exactly what their job duties are and how they should be paid through that. That process continues because none of that had been touched literally since 2016. And so what we've come up with, as you can see in and some of the narrative that you have in your packet, is that we're looking at an inflation cost of living increase of 9.84% for everyone in the village beginning on April 11th of this year. And that's based on the fact that we're changing our pay scales from what we used to have, where 11 different pay scales, and each one of those had 10 steps in them, which became very cumbersome to work with and very hard for people to have any sort of discretion to assign certain raises or increases in people as they worked at it. So what we've done is we're proposing that the village council adopt a range system where you have an entry point, an entry point level, a midpoint, and a maximum point. And I think the range in most of those scales span about 82% from top to bottom. What this does is it gives the department heads the ability to assess their employees and provide raises as they go through the process of looking at what their mid and maximum ranges are without having to land on a specific step. So that gives them more flexibility in rating and giving raises as need be for the various employees. The only thing that would overcome that or trump that, if you will, would be the fact that if the state says, okay, we're going to give a mandatory 2 or 3% increase, say, to the first responders, fires, and police departments, then of course we have to go along and follow state law as that comes forward. But we've developed more flexibility inside for analyzing and proposing increases for our employees. So that's I think, a very positive thing and a very smart thing to do. But the other thing that, again, I want to emphasize is that we've had a lot of conversation between Melanie, Judy Bentley, and myself, and Raina as we've looked at this, as we go forward to make this a good thing. And it's important because that hadn't really been done in the past, where we've had that much conversation trying to, very much define the job duties and the job descriptions. And I'll call out one again, I'll go back to Raina Aragon, who is director of our finance. And we had a situation where we were talking to Judy Bentley, and she said, gosh, what Raina is doing in her duties is the equivalent of what 3 other people would be doing in Rio Rancho or in Albuquerque. And we can go to various positions throughout the village and find that same situation in every department, where people are going back to that word multitasking and doing their things. So what we have shown you in the narrative is that we've given some examples of pay scales 1 through 11 on the narrative sheet, and we've given you some examples of who are sitting in those positions. Pay scale 1, there are no jobs currently at that level, and pay scale 10, there are no jobs currently in that level. But we have the flexibility to move somebody in there if we have like a deputy fire chief, or we have a deputy clerk, or we have someone come in at an entry level that's a part-time person, say in Parks and Rec or someone in that area. So we've tried to expand the capabilities of our department heads to hire people, to give them raises, and to make everything more competitive, as like I've said. Now, the question then arises, how do we pay for all this? Which is the next question. So we're proposing at this start on, and you'll see this in the next item on the agenda, we're proposing that this starts on April 11th, when this would all kick in. So for the last quarter, the next item on the agenda you'll be looking at is a bar for approximately $61,000, which takes into effect moving some gross receipts tax monies into the last quarter, and mixed with vacancy savings that we will have, that will cover the last quarter for about a quarter of $61,000 increase. As we move into the next year, the salary increases will impact the village to the tune of about $303,795. And that's for the salary increases. When you add into that the benefits on top of the folks that are being looked at, all the folks in the village that are being looked at, the total cost for next fiscal year will be $410,000. And so as we move into the budgeting process, one of the questions that I ask myself, I ask Raina, is that, is that sustainable as we go forward? We believe that it is, based upon our gross receipts tax that are trending upward, also based on the fact that over the years, we've looked at fund balances that we've discovered through our look at when we had the McCard firm looking here through vacancy savings. We've consistently, over the last 7 to 8 years, have fund balances in the years of almost $300,000. So we'll consider all those factors as we go into the budgeting process for next fiscal year. And I'm confident, based upon the trends, that we'll be able to hit those numbers rather easily. We, of course, look at our budget every day, matter of fact, during the course of the year, to make sure that we are on track to stay in a position where the village is responsible financially. But coming back to the whole situation of why we're here, is that I firmly believe that the most important investment we can make in the village is making an investment in the people that work here and potentially will work here in the future and have worked here for a number of years. And so I don't think there's anybody on the council that would question the folks that work in this village and how important they work here and the dedication they give to the village. And that's one thing for me, since I've been here since 2019, that has impressed me the most, working with the people that I get to work with every day, is that they're here to help the village, they're here to preserve the village, and they're here to sustain the village and provide a public service for the folks here in Corrales. So I urge you to pass this. I urge you to support our village employees as we go forward.
Thank you, Ron. I think what I'd like to do is take a motion in a second, and then we will open it for questions from the counselors as part of a discussion. Counselor Knight, and then Counselor Murray.
I move that we accept Resolution 2204.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have a motion and a second discussion. Counselor Murray, and then
Thank you, Mayor.
Counselor Burkett, and then Counselor Waldman.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I had a few questions. So for pay scale 1, I know you kind of touched on it as an entry level position. I think we ought to also work up something for like internships and also maybe apprenticeships for people who are maybe coming in to look at a trade that might be going on within the village. I would like to see that as part of one of the descriptions. And I was kind of worried about pay scale 10, but you kind of addressed that to me. Also, do we still have volunteer fire department personnel? I think, is that true?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So do they fit in this scheme somewhere?
Anthony, please, Chief Martinez. He's unmuting himself. There you go.
Mayor, Council, yes, we do have volunteer firefighters. I'm going to be seeking more once we're done with this COVID and I can open back up. I pay volunteer firefighters on what we call an AD, administratively directed. So they fall under just an hourly wage. I don't think it's not part of the pay scale. And then they just help me fill in for coverage for someone that's sick or vacation, or just extra duty when we have like wind events coming fire season, things like that. And that's part of my.
Are they paid like minimum wage, or is there something comparable that is scaled to what maybe a full-time firefighter might be getting?
So what we have is we have a scale that has been approved based on local numbers pertaining to their certification. So if it's pertaining to wildfire, we usually follow the state and federal guidelines for their position, like firefighter level 1 or 2 or engine boss. For other stuff, it's usually like a minimum, basic minimum wage based on some of their training as well. So.
Okay. All right, thank you, Chief, but, okay, sorry, Mayor.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to recognize Counselor Audio, who I think had something he wanted to add to that.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Murray, the reason why volunteer firefighters are not typically included in pay scales is because pay scales involve, and the terminology becomes a little bit difficult, but what you're looking at is full-time regular village employees that you're going to put in a pay scale that receive the full benefit package, retirement, and then have a right to due process, except for those who are exempt, which are a very limited number. So the pay scale is designed for regular employees like those. Folks in special situations, another example is crossing guards. You know, there's those special classifications that aren't regular full-time folks. So that's why they don't fall within the pay structure.
Okay, well, that brought up the other question that you mentioned. Are we looking at this as totally exempt, or are they exempt versus non-exempt, or are we looking at salary versus hourly wages?
Well, for a public entity, if anyone else wants to chime in after I answer it, but for a public entity, these pay scales travel through regular full-time employees who are non-exempt and who require due process for any changes in their work, you know, so due process to terminate. And then they also cover exempt employees. So the pay scale runs the gamut of both of those categories.
The only thing, Counselor, that I would add to that on this specifically, in our village, the position of administrator is not included in these pay scales.
Why?
Because it's a contract agreement or an agreement between the administrator and the mayor.
Okay, all right. I think that pretty well answered all my questions.
Thank you very much, Counselor Murray. Counselor Burkett and then Counselor Waldman.
Great. I think this is great to see, probably long overdue, but I'm glad it's better late than never. My question is the methodology of determining who falls into which pay scale. I'm looking at some of the people in some of the scales and certainly don't want to assign value to what people do, but that's what we've done here. And I'm seeing some of the firefighters in lower pay scales than I expected them to find them in. And I don't know if there's room for conversations about that, but I was surprised to see firefighter / EMT in pay scale 2. With, I mean, as much as they're doing and as essential as they are to a lot of things. Just a question I had. I mean, if those are standard protocol, or if there's some sort of standardization that we use to base this off of, or if there is possibly some movement for both probably police and fire and a couple other positions, if there's the ability to move them from one pay scale to another.
Ron, I think maybe
Counselor, what we did there was look across comparables between, like I said, Rio Rancho and the city of Albuquerque, and try to land in there. But the other thing that's more important, or is just as important as that, is that we looked at what I would consider to be mid-range, and anybody, and I'll give you an example, a very specific example, is that everybody in the village, with the exception of probably our department heads and a few other folks that are not department heads, everybody else will get a 7% increase to bring them closer to mid-range. And that was one of the equity problems that I wanted to deal with, or we wanted to deal with as we looked at this. So there are some firefighters and some police officers and other people in the village that will get an additional 7% increase when this kicks in on April 11th. And as far as looking at the ranges, we looked at comparables across 2 or 3 different cities, including Albuquerque and Village of Los Ranchos. I'm sorry, Rio Rancho. And Judy Bentley is on the line, is on the call, and I'm just going to ask her. I don't want to get her too far into the discussion here because I promised her we wouldn't do that. But Judy, if you want to add anything to that, please feel free to do that.
Sure. Sorry about the lighting in here. So what I did, you guys had like 22 different pay scales, and some of them were 14 cents apart from each other, and people were in all individual ones. So what I did is I went through and took out the ones, I took out 11 that were very, very close to each other. And in almost every case, like wherever the firefighters, for instance, were, I moved them to the next highest pay scale. It wasn't very far apart. So I pretty much left everybody where they were prior to me doing this, wherever they had been before, the pay, close to the pay scale they'd been on before. And then they moved up for the inflation and then the equity adjustment. Does that answer your question?
I think the key thing, Counselor, is the equity adjustments, because we recognize some of the questions that you're asking and trying to put something into it that wasn't totally arbitrary. And so by doing that, we found a number of 7%, which gets everybody up to their particular mid-range, close to their mid-range in the particular category they're in.
And I think my question, I appreciate you guys tightening up the ranges, but just looking at, for example, a firefighter is in pay scale 2, and we have maintenance in pay scale 4, and both are critical, but I feel like we've leaned on some potentially a lot more recently. So I don't know if we can have a conversation about firefighters, police officers, and maybe putting them into a higher scale. That's obviously not probably a short conversation, but when I look at some of the people in some of these scales, I think that with my view of risk taking, value to the community, difficulty in losing these people to other neighboring communities, I think we could maybe make some adjustments, or we should look at making some adjustments.
Counselor Randy, would you please respond?
Thanks, Mayor. Councilor Burkett, the issue with this that gets complicated is classification and compensation are done by professionals like the one that was hired here, Ms. Bentley, for the reason that it is a very, very fact and law-based decision. They look at knowledge, skills, and abilities for every position and apply their HR expertise. So it isn't really a situation we can get into when we're dealing with a pay scale like this that's being adopted, or a compensation study that has been done. I think that conversation is appropriate to have, but not when we're in the process of approving a pay scale. It could be something that is discussed in a work study, for example, is what are our retention rates like for fire and police and so forth, to see if there's a problem. But that should happen separately from a new compensation plan.
Thank you. Counselor Woltman?
Yeah, first of all, thanks very much for the effort. I think it's really a terrific piece you put together. I do have a couple of questions. Number one, this is January 25th. We're looking at 2.5 months before this becomes effective. I wonder why that is. We have the money now. Why can't we go ahead and pay these people as soon as possible? That's number one. Number two, are there no steps then between the mid-range and the upper level, and it's still at the discretion of a supervisor? And if that's the case, are mandatory annual review? Are there going to be mandatory annual reviews for each position? Otherwise, I think there could be employees stuck at certain levels for quite some time. So,
thank you, Counselor Woltman. Who would like to respond? Yes, Mr. Curry, please go ahead.
Okay, the reason why we're doing it, Counselor Woltman, in April is strictly because we're trying to match up the budget necessities to the pay increases. That's a simple answer. We're trying to look at our budget we've looked at our budget and we decided that as far as fulfilling our budget expectations and making sure that we don't over budget things, that's why we chose April 11th. And as far as the pay scales go, we believe from the past, the various steps that were in there, some cases we had 10 steps. I think in the fire department, we had 12 steps. And I think in the police department and maybe one other department, we had 11 steps. And to give a pay raise, legally, you had to land on those specific steps. And what this does is it allows more flexibility as far as if someone has earned a raise and gets a raise, they have more flexibility and rather than trying to land on a specific number. And that's why we've done away with the steps and given more flexibility on the pay ranges.
And will there be any?
But
more-
they can land if, I'll give you an example, if someone's making $15 an hour and as a minimum, and their mid-range is, let's say, $22 an hour, and their maximum is $28 an hour. And so they come in and they're making $16 an hour and the supervisor wants to give them or have been authorized to give them up to a 6% raise. They can do that up, along those lines without having to land on a specific step.
Okay.
And
great.
will annual reviews be required?
Pardon?
Will annual reviews be required?
Annual reviews are done right now. We've done annual reviews. I do annual reviews on the department heads in the spring, and then they do annual reviews on their employees thereafter, or right around the same time.
Counselor Parker.
Mayor Roque, councilors. So 5-6 years since the last time this was reviewed, is there a normal period of time that it takes between these reviews? And if this is beyond what's normally or best practices, is there a way to put something in now that kind of forces the hand so that we don't have these lags if a lag actually did happen in there?
There's nothing in our code that requires us to do these on a particular time. What we've done is we simply looked at it and said, it's time. If the council decides that they want to have this looked at every 2 years, you of course can do that, or every 4 years, or every 18 months. But from a practical point of view, you want to be able to have budget cycles and trends that you can look at. And so the 9.84%, for instance, is based on looking back at 2019. And as I think most people are aware here that look at inflation rates, you can go back at any point in time and look at inflation rates from, X time back in 2016 or 2019, or back in the 1990s sometime. So we picked 2019 on the 9.84%. But Counselor, we could look at, you could ask this to be reviewed by the administration, whoever that is, every 2 years or every 4 years, if you so choose.
No, I'm not asking to do. I was just curious what best practices were, what other groups are doing, and if you need that time period to analyze stuff before making these types of decisions, I totally get that. I'm just trying to make sure that we're following suit with what you were talking about in terms of making this a very desirable place for people to come to, instead of, and I'm not saying that the people that work for the village right now falls into that category, but say we lose someone, we end up getting someone that we just have to because they'll fill the spot, not because they're the best candidate for the position. That's all. Thank you.
Okay.
Ron, this is the mayor. Did we get any input from Ms. Bentley about best practices?
Judy, you want to fire away on that question?
I really don't know that there's a best practice. I think, as you stated, if you start losing people, or if people are hitting up against the max of the pay range and they're not able to get raises, if that's what you decide to do, normally that's what happens. then it's probably time to look at it again. And when there's great inflation, like there has been, especially this year, is probably a good time. But the places I've worked, sometimes they don't look at it. Well, the state of New Mexico kind of looked at it every year, but they didn't really change things. But I would say maybe every 8 years, maybe 10 years, doing a really comprehensive compensation and job description analysis. Yeah, you don't want to do it too often either. I mean, you should be looking at it and looking at trends. If people are leaving or you're unable to recruit, as you said, then you probably have problems.
Counselor Murray?
Yeah, I was just
I'm
curious.
sorry. Yes, go ahead. And then I'm going to get to Randy, who I think had a response.
Yeah,
Go
just a
ahead.
quick question. I guess, do we have a very high churn rate in terms of employees coming and going?
I can't give you an exact percentage, but I know that I just did a back of the envelope thing about 18 months from the time that I came in here in July of 2019. And I did that about 18 months in, and we were at about 15% turnover at that point. But I haven't looked at it lately, Counselor.
Randy?
I just wanted to clarify on Councilor Parker's question. It's a real good question to look what is the norm. My experience has been is a compensation plan is kind of like the comprehensive plan. You don't want to change it too often because it's very hard, and to do it fairly and accurately. So you don't want to mess with it all the time, and you want to. Obviously, if there's a problem, you look at classification and or compensation. But if there's not a problem and it's working, then let it be, because it's anytime you make changes, you are subject to unintended consequences, like in changing an ordinance or a comp plan. So you want to leave it alone as much as possible, as long as it's working.
I think we've heard from everybody. Would it be time to call the question on the motion here? If somebody would like to, I will say there is a motion and a second in order to approve Resolution 2204. And I'm going to take a vote, of course. Councilor Waldman,
Aye.
Councilor Murray,
Aye.
Councilor Burkett,
Aye.
Councilor Lucero,
Aye.
Councilor Knight,
Aye.
Councilor Parker.
Aye.
I'm just delighted. Thank you so much. And I'm pretty sure all the employees, of which there are many, I can see them, are extremely happy. Thank you. Thank you so much, Council. All right, we're going to move on to item number 2. It's consideration, action, and approval of Resolution 2205. This is a resolution authorizing adjustments of various funds for fiscal year 2021-2022. And as explained by Administrator Curry, this gives the authorization to move that $61,000 to cover these raises from April 1st until the new fiscal year. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move approval, Mayor.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion? All right, I'm going to take a vote on it then. Councilor Lucero,
Aye.
Councilor Knight,
Aye.
Councilor Parker.
Aye.
Councilor Burkett,
Aye.
Councilor Murray,
Aye.
Councilor Waldman.
Aye.
Thank you very much. All right, the next item we have here is a presentation on the Gonzales Trail by Dayton Voorhees, and I believe we even have a pretty presentation. Good evening, Dayton. How are you?
I'm great. Good evening. And thank you very much, Mayor and councilors, for the opportunity to give this presentation. And thanks as well for your support of trails in general. Our presentation is a group of slides, and Melanie told me she could, there we go. So I'm just going to quickly run through these slides, and then we can answer any questions that you may have. So you could go to the second slide, Melanie. the Gonzalez farmland, as you know, is right in the center of Corrales. And in this opportunity came about really in 2009, 5.5 acres of that property was acquired with farmland preservation funds. So that's like the heart of this trail system. And it turns out that the boundaries of this area are quite amenable to trails. There's a farm access road on the north side. It's used sporadically by equestrians and walkers currently. There is a 10-foot wide trail easement on the south boundary that goes all the way from the Acequia to Corrales Road. At the east end of the preserved farmland, there's an opportunity for like a spur trail, if you will, that would go from the farmland or from the farm road to the library. There's a generously wide Corrales shoulder, so the trail would not exit directly onto the road. And then on the west, we have the Acequia. So if you could go to the next slide. So the goals of this are really three in major. One is in general to provide recreational opportunities in the heart of Corrales for Corrales villagers. But there are two other goals that are pretty unique to this location. One is connectivity. This trail system would connect the west side trail system and west side villagers to the library, and then to the village administration, and then to the east side trails. And it would also then connect the east side trails and east side villagers to the library. The second unique aspect of this, and we have a couple of slides around this, is that this trail system can serve as a celebration and an example of Corrales farming, both the history of farming as well as the current farming activities. The next slide. Well, oh, there we go. So this is a Google map view of what I'm talking about. You can see the Corrales Library there right above the yellow bar. The farm road is shown in red. The connection that would go from the farm road to the library is in blue. From the library down, making a jog around the bank to Corrales Road would be in yellow. And there's that orange Corrales shoulder shown there. Next slide. So the work that would be involved, there would be some tree clearing and trimming, and I have a slide that sort of shows what that might look like. This would go in our presentation now from the Corrales Library to Corrales Road. There'd be some clearing for trail surface, probably some new dirt surface to accommodate walkers and runners, hybrid and mountain bikers and equestrians. The Parks and Rec group and the equestrians recommended a new gate in the library fence by the band shell, so that access there would not be through the La Entrada Park. There is an existing gate in La Entrada Park, and we would keep that. Lynn Sievert recommended that the grade at the northwest corner be modified to ensure ADA compliance, and there's a slide I'll show you about that. And in discussion with Parks and Rec, we thought that this would be up to the village, but some sort of very simple physical barrier between the trail and both the private 3 acres adjacent to Corrales Road and the farmland preservation 5 acres would be a good thing. And then creating some signage in collaboration with the current farmers to designate that there's active farming in progress. Signage at Corrales Road to designate proper trail alignment, and then the trail courtesy signage at the entrances to the trail. Next slide. This is just a slide showing the division between the easternmost 3 acres, which are currently privately owned, and the farmland preservation, which is on the west or the left side. Next slide. This to me is really one of the hearts of this trail system, should it happen. This is a testimonial plaque to Juan Gonzalez and to the Gonzalez family, celebrating the heritage and history of that family and the history of Corrales farming that dates back to the early 1700s. When you're standing reading this plaque, you are standing directly on land that has been farmed for hundreds of years, right in the center of Corrales. This plaque is, it's off Corrales Road, so I'm sure that many villagers have no idea about this particular heritage, and this trail would help show that. The next slide. This will just be a quick loop around the trail. This is a trail looking west from Corrales Road, showing the existing farm road. The next slide. This is the entrance from the acequia to the northwest corner. And this is the slope that Lynn Sievert was talking about modifying to make the trail ADA compliant. Next slide. This shows the existing gate in La Entrada Park. It shows the type of clearing of brush that would be needed to do to create the trail surface. The little yellow flags on the left are where the 10-foot boundary of the trail easement would be. The next slide. This shows the backside of the band shell. This would be a proposed second gate for horse access and for access not going across the park. Next slide. And this is an example of the current farming activity that this trail would showcase. It's incredibly beautiful. The next slide is sort of just a summary of our current proposal. This field trail would enhance recreational opportunities, would provide trail connectivities, would showcase Corrales farming heritage and current farming activities, and we think could be created at a modest cost with significant benefits. The next slide. This speaks to the trail easement that goes all the way to the acequia. Because there's a trail easement there exists the future possibility of creating a fully circumferential trail around this property. It's not currently feasible because the westernmost part of this land is being flood irrigated, and it would just not be appropriate at this time to put a trail there. But we would like that option to be noted, so that in the future, if things change, we could extend the trail. And the next slide. The purple shows what that future opportunity would be like. You can see that this would then create a circumferential trail. It would be about a little more than 0.8 miles all the way around. The next slide. This was quite collaborative. I've mentioned the equestrians gave us input. Parks and Rec gave us a lot of great input. We also talked with Farmland Preservation and the Library Board, who were supportive of this project. So that's the end of this presentation. Our co-chair, Chris Allen, is here, I believe, and we're happy to try to answer any questions you may have.
Any of the counselors have a question for Dayton or Chris, I'd like to say it was a lovely presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Counselor Murray.
Yeah, I was just, since you mentioned farmland preservation, do they have any problem with us making improvements for the trails?
I walked with Lisa Brown. We walked and talked about this, and they do not. They actually think that a project like this might actually create additional support for future farmland preservation if we can showcase what that actually means to people.
No, I agree with you. I think this is a great idea, and I appreciate you putting all the work into it. Yeah, I look forward to supporting this if it comes up.
This is Joanne, and I wanted to make one thing that I think your group has done such a good job of getting buy-in. There's also currently a proposed project to put a structure on Lawn Trotter Park. It's by Focal, the Friends of the Corrales Library. And we don't know exactly where it's going to be located yet, not where the pollinators garden is. I want to make that clear. But it is currently perhaps right on the other side of the band shell. So I think it would be worth everybody's while to get together and figure out, we don't want to create, something, just a big bottleneck and a jam there. So I think that's another group, and you would be working with staff and with Christy Gilbert from Focal. And so I think it would be worth your while to continue to explore how that would work.
That's a great idea. When we talked with the library board, this was not brought up, so we will definitely do that.
Right. It's Friends of the Corrales Library, and Lori Stout knows about it, but you also, and Lynn knows about it, and Mike Chavez knows about it. So, and I think they're also going to be talking about it at the Parks and Recreation Committee meeting this Thursday. So, it's a good time to get some synergy together, I think. Are there any other questions for either of our presenters? Yes, Counselor Knight, and then Counselor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, great presentation. I just wanted to ask you, on the Google Maps handout that you gave, is the yellow section, that just needs to be cleared off, right? That's already belongs to the village, and that just needs to be cleared off.
Correct. That's there. It's mostly brush, and that 10-foot easement does go along the side of the private land all the way to Corrales Road. We had Aaron research that before he left, and he assured us that that was the case. And it actually shows in little tiny print on that on the slide that showed the two separate parcels.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Parker.
Mayor Rowe, councilors, Dayton and Chris, thank you so much for doing your hard work on this. I applaud you for it. And I think it's a great idea to create that trail that all the way around that Gonzalez Field, because I think there'd really be some cross usage of the trail and the park area on there. And as I'm looking at your presentation in the back of the band shell that has some decent graffiti, not high quality, but I think that's a real opportunity if someone wanted to investigate maybe putting in some sort of Corrales mural that really kind of glorifies what you were talking about, that would go hand in hand with that placard that you showed earlier. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Chris, please. You're muted, Chris.
Of course I was muted. Mayor, members of the council, if I may add one other small point, part of the reason why we wanted to establish this trail is that it would allow, in particular, children to be able to access the Corrales Library either on foot, on horseback, or on bicycles without going down Lawn Trotter Road, which tends to be a relatively busy road. And people don't always obey the speed limit. And sometimes people park along it, even though they shouldn't. So this provides a very safe alternative for children and adults to access that library without going on that road.
Thank you, Chris. That's a really good point. I've been a huge advocate of trying to develop systems that could connect our current recreation center and the horse ring all the way to this area and further north without endangering everyone on Corrales Road. So I think it has. Thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions? Well, thank you again. And I hope, will you be leaving a copy of that presentation with Melanie? Is that all right for her to keep a copy?
Sure, she has one, yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So if I may ask, Mayor and members of the council, what should be the next step to accomplish this project?
Well, I think we can, I think with the council's direction, we're not going to, it's not an action item tonight, but we can go ahead and try to set something up so that you can have some further input with Focal and the village and everything, and make sure you understand where you're going to go. And then at some point, a recommendation could come back to the council for further action. And then it could be, funded. Councilor Murray.
Yeah, I would also suggest just draw up a dollar amount that you need for all the material, labor and so forth that you need to, to put it in place.
Exactly.
Mayor, members of the council, if I may, when we talked with Lynn Sieverts, he said, and Mike Chavez as well, he said that essentially you own the equipment and it really wouldn't cost that much. They would just incorporate it into their normal duties. Am I understanding that correctly, Dayton?
Yes, I think that's what, I mean, there may be some, if there was a small chain and post fencing, if there was, the cost to create a second gate, maybe the cost to bring in a bit of dirt if needed. But we could work with Mike and come back with a dollar number for you.
I think that's the best idea. And I would also like to right now say that sounds exactly like Mike and Lynn. They do for everybody, right? Oh, don't worry, we'll do that ourselves. So
right.
Probably if you talk to both of them and see worst case scenario, what you're looking at here.
Okay.
So I leave it to you to get started to make those connections, and then you'll be coming back with a firmed up proposal and a dollar amount attached. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. We've reached number 4 on our new business item. This is consideration, action, and approval of first contract renewal with New Mexico Local Government Law, LLC for Village Attorney Services. Randy, did you want to speak to this item?
Mayor, thank you. I first want to say thank you to you and council and to the citizens of the village for the opportunity we've had. We started working for you guys under a small professional services agreement in 2019. And then I went out on my own and started the firm with New Mexico Local Government Law on March 1 of 2020, and you guys stuck with me, and I appreciate that. Then we did the RFP in late 2020, and we were lucky enough to receive the award of the RFP for legal services. At the time that we did that, we were 4 lawyers, including myself, and I just want to give you the updates. I mean, we are 7 lawyers now, including the addition of Mr. Randy Van Vleck, Mike Garcia, who is a 25-year lawyer with the city of Albuquerque and the county of Bernalillo, and the addition of Nick Audio, who some have said is related to me, and that may be a fact. I'm not going to go into details of it, but he came on board. He's a litigator, and he has been doing work for going on 10 years, both as a lawyer and then as prior to that a paralegal, representing local governments in court proceedings, mostly police and corrections clients, but all types of litigation for local governments. So I just wanted to emphasize, we're continuing to build the firm. I don't see us getting much bigger. We wanted to have enough resources so we could provide services in most areas of local government law that folks need. And we're dedicated to continue to serve in that way. After I heard that employees were getting a 9% raise, I should have asked for a 9% raise this year, but I didn't. So the renewal would be for same terms as under the existing contract, no other changes, just simply the extension of a year. So I'd appreciate your support because I'd love to keep helping you. Thanks.
Randy, I did want to ask you, you didn't give everybody, and I know that Mr. Trujillo works with the village on, especially in land use and land planning issues.
Yes, and he had been with me since the beginning. Patrick Trujillo, who was with Bernalillo County for years and years, and then he was Sandoval County attorney before he retired. So he's been helping out with P&Z and helping Lori. Then Charles Rennick, who has been helping us with some of our cases as well, is probably a 40-year lawyer, 30 years representing local governments, and he's been with us for quite a while too. And then Corey, you all know, who's been helping a tremendous amount on getting us straight on the terribly mixed up and complex things the state's been doing to us. And she's my youngest lawyer, and I've got 2 paralegals and a new legal assistant and some other folks helping us out. So that's it. I stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. Do people have questions for Counselor Audio? Any counselors? All right. I don't see any. So I'm going to have a motion to renew this contract with NM Local Government Law LLC for Village Attorney Services. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All right, thank you. Counselor Woolman, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I think that was Counselor Parker. All right, I'm going to take a vote at this time. Counselor Lucero?
Aye.
Counselor Parker?
Aye.
Counselor Knight?
Aye.
Counselor Burkett?
Aye.
Counselor Murray?
All right.
Counselor Waldman?
Aye.
Well, congratulations, I think.
Well, if we could get a respite from having to continue the cannabis struggle, then that would be the gift enough. But I look forward to working with you all. And Mayor, I will miss working with you, but we'll make the most of the last few months.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. As we move forward to announcements and future agenda items, I know that we're going to make some time one way or another to discuss LGIP and ICP. We've been working on simplified color-coded ICP lists that I hope I can distribute to everybody so that it will make talking to our legislators easier, because they're going to ask you at the moment things and we want to make sure. I hope the Chapter 18 revisions will be available in easy to read format. I'm hoping we'll have a clean copy and then one with all of the different ideas and revisions, but that one just wasn't readable. I want one that's going to have a clean copy so we can make a good break of that. Melanie, do we have any other items right now for the agenda next time?
Main Street is going to do a presentation for us on
Absolutely.
everything that's going on. So I talked to Angela. She's going to have that ready for us.
Great.
And I think that's the main one for now.
Councilor Murray?
Yeah, I just also curious, has there been an update to the discussion we had last meeting about the property?
I believe there will be a closed session next meeting.
Okay.
Councilor Waldman?
Yes, there have been several meetings recently regarding animal care in the village, temporary basis. And I'd like to bring that up for discussion at a relatively near future meeting regarding temporary housing of animals. There needs to be a lot of improvement, and we talked to some of the people in the village, and I think they're behind that. So I'd like to bring that up in a future meeting.
Thank you, Councilor Waldman. Will do. All right, and there may be more items as we go along, but having said that, I would definitely entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you so much, everybody. Good night. It's really windy now outside my house, so be careful. Be careful
Yeah.
getting home.
Let
Bye.
the snow blow.
Yeah. Bye.
Uh,
Good night.
Good night.